Hi, Rosalyn. Welcome to my show, for immigrant women entrepreneurs. And I'm so excited to have you here. And I would love to know about your immigrant experience, because you immigrated from the Philippines to Canada, right, with your parents. And so I would love to hear about that. And I also know that you are a member of One Asian, and that's an organization for Asian women around the world, right? So
Yes,
could you please tell us more about this?
sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Galina, for inviting me to this interview. It's always a pleasure to talk about my experience and talk about my work. So, yes, it's true. I immigrated when I was very young. Actually, I was 12. My family immigrated to Canada, specifically Vancouver. And I, have spent over half my life in Canada. Uh, and I'm not sure how I can capture my immigrant experience in a nutshell, but if I were to try to do that, I would say that um, the experience of migration was the single most impactful event in my life, in the sense that, when my whole family packed up and moved to a different country, it created this pivotal point in my life where I clearly differentiated, like, before we immigrated and after immigrated, because they were just two very different experiences that affected the way I saw myself, affected the way I interacted with my family members, and affected my identity. And it's still sort of molding and shaping me today, actually, even now, almost 20 years later.
Right.
Yeah. We actually moved to a suburb in Vancouver called Richmond. And it's actually more like a bedroom community. And we happen to know, my parents have friends who lived in Richmond. And we thought the settlement would be easier if we actually knew people, which it was. It really helped. But one of the strangest experiences that I still remember to this day is going to Richmond and seeing so many other immigrants from Asia that I didn't even feel like I moved to Canada, because at the time, this was in 1995, and at the time there were a lot of immigrants from Hong Kong, just before the 97 takeover.
And what did they usually do? I mean, did they, what kind of jobs did they do? What kind of schools did they go to? Were there any communities or organizations for them?
Right. In my experience growing up in such a community, there was a common occurrence, actually, of you know the children going to school, and the mothers, helping to get the family settled, and then the fathers of the family, they actually come to, maybe help the family settle their first few months, but they actually go back to Asia.
Really?
And yeah, and they, you know, because of this idea that, it's hard to make a living in Canada, or that if they're in business, they don't want to really surrender business. So there are a lot of single parent families among the immigrant community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I personally experience, as well as I know a lot of my friends experience. And if you ever have a chance to come to Vancouver, especially Richmond, you go to a restaurant, and it's really interesting because you will see that the tables, you will see multiple families at a table, but then you will never see the dad. Like, it's always the mom and a bunch of kids, and then there's another mom with a bunch of kids, and it's just how it is even up to this day. So it's a really common phenomenon that happens. We
Yeah.
actually have a term for it. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called astronaut dad. Uh,
No, I have never heard of that.
yeah, basically, or astronaut just means like you kind of you drop in once
Yeah,
in a while, but then you fly off. So
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
it actually it has implications in terms of the parent-child relationship, in terms of the marriage, within the family, as well as the impact on the community. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
So
this is
did it?
my experience growing up.
So did it turn out that it was more, it was better for men to go back to their home countries and make money there?
Yes, definitely.
Wow. And they organize some sort of trade companies, between their home country and Canada?
Um, Often they just carried on with whatever business they had. Most of the men that I was aware of, they had their own business,
Hmm.
and from time to time they would spend time in Canada, but in large part they were actually absent. So, you know, this
And
experience actually, because I experienced it myself, it led me to want to explore even deeper, like my experience, and I actually studied ethnic and intercultural studies in university
hmm.
in an attempt to understand my experience, as well as help others with their challenges. So then after university, I worked in immigrant settlement services in Victoria, and so I'm very familiar with the immigrant experience, not only from my own personal life, but from the men and women that I've worked with.
Yeah. So one more question about the families. And so what did women usually do? Did they stay at home with their kids, or did they do certain jobs? And is the income that the father provides usually enough for the whole family to support the whole family in Canada?
I think you see different scenarios across the board. You will have one family where maybe the women just needs to make sure that the kids are clothed and fed and shuttled to school, and they don't need to work. That's a good scenario. A more challenging scenario is where maybe the woman does need to go out and find work, because for whatever reason, they need extra income. And that was the case in my family. So my mom, she actually never really worked until we came to Canada, and then she found herself like working a retail job, for example.
Hmm.
Uh, and what's really amazing in my mind is how after the immigrant experience, it's the women um, who mobilize the family in terms of like finding economic resources, in terms of creating social connections and integrating into the community. And what I observe over the years is actually the men who have the most difficult time settling and integrating, and that's why they choose, a lot of them choose to go back to their country of origin, because it's just so difficult for them. And in my experience working in immigrant settlements, there's a lot of support for women and families, but I very rarely see men's groups, helping them to integrate into the new country.
Wow, that's so interesting. And why do you think that happens? Do women have some a gene that you know? Uh,
Well, I think, well, I think women, uh, we have this ability to, first of all, we're very resilient, I find, and we're very resourceful, and we're natural connectors. So, the fact that we're in a new place doesn't really scare us. I mean, it's scary, but we can find our way. And I believe because women also, have a special uh, bond with their children, they will do anything to make sure that their children, thrives in a new place, and that They do whatever they can to help the family survive and thrive. Um, I feel like, on the other hand, the immigrant experience for a man, it comes with this almost like, I'm not sure how to euphemize it, so I'm just going to say it's kind of a blow to their ego, in the sense that, it is very difficult to find work for a lot of them, even for skilled immigrants, because of the experience of downward mobility and the credentials not being recognized in the new country. And it still happens to this day. Uh, and I think it's very difficult for them psychologically to accept maybe a lower professional position, or having to start over, or maybe they have to drive taxi, the stereotypical immigrant with a PhD driving a taxi. That's really hard to swallow for a lot of men. Some do it, and others just prefer to keep the same. Well, they prefer not to do that,
Right.
And keep the business that they're running. They're not willing to take that risk, basically. The immigrant experience does promote certain qualities in people in general, but certain qualities in women that actually prepare them to become successful entrepreneurs. So things like being very adaptable to change, being resourceful, actually taking on a challenge, even if you don't know what the outcome will be, and just going out there and doing things, and not being afraid to make mistakes, or not being afraid to look a certain way. And I think one of the reasons why the women thrive more is, like, they don't care if they're working a retail job. Like, they just care about that their family can make a go of it, Whereas I think for men, they have more like a pride barrier. And I find actually that, especially in community like Victoria, I lived in Victoria for 6-7 years, and it's very different than Vancouver. It's a smaller urban center, so there aren't a lot of professional or corporate opportunities. And in that community, I find the women, they bring their skills, maybe in cooking, or planning events, or whatever it is they're passionate about, and they turn it into a business. And so that is really great, because they essentially become the backbone of the community, socially and economically, and they end up supporting the community more so than the men themselves who are struggling.
Yeah.
I don't want to paint a picture that, the men are not really doing anything. I think they want to, but the barrier is so much stronger for them, I find.
Yeah. So that's the reason why you became a member and one of the founders of One Asian. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I became involved in One Asian as a founding leader. So I was one of the women who, helped to create One Asian, and now I'm, part of the executive team helping to grow it. And actually, how I came to be involved in One Asian was, knowing the two other women on the executive team, Alice Chen and Olivia Cheng, and we were all in a self-development program designed to help entrepreneurs to grow themselves and become more successful in business. At the same time, the program is for really anybody who wants a more joyful and successful life. So we began exploring, the curriculum and how it relates to our Asian experience. And even though each of us come from different professional backgrounds, so one is from corporate, and another is from the acting field, and I'm from more like a social change field. Like, we talked about how we felt that there wasn't really a place for us to talk about our struggles, in terms of, having an Asian upbringing. And at the same time, we can see the strengths of having an Asian upbringing.
So in One Asian, I read that you provide consulting, right, and coaching to women uh, of Asian upbringing, right, and it's for entrepreneurs mostly, right? So you're empowering women entrepreneurs, right?
Right. I'll tell you about what we do in One Asian and why I feel so passionate about sharing our curriculum and our community to really, Asian women around the world.
Yeah.
So, One Asian is first and foremost, we're actually a space and we're a community for women to grow themselves to become the best version of themselves. So we specifically target women of Asian heritage because we believe that as Asian women, we are actually we have a specific bundle of traits that inherent in our upbringing that we may not be using and leveraging to the full potential. And we actually have three different programs or three different ways that people can, get involved in our community. We have networking brunches. We have online coaching, which people can sign up for online without even ever having met us. But it's really easy. They just can go to our website and sign up. And then we have live weekend intensives, which offer a like deeper, richer experience of connecting within themselves as well as with others.
So you have
And
an online community, basically.
we do. We have online coaching, and we're also on meetup.com.
Amazing.
Apart from the more formal programming, we also have socials that our members organize organically. And from time to time, we, have speaker events like expert panels, for example. We want, not only are we a coaching program, we're also a leadership platform. So we want our members to use One Asian as a platform to advance whatever it is they want to achieve in their life. So, for example, one of our members is very passionate about raising money for leukemia, lymphoma research because it has personal significance to her. Her dad had died from blood-related disorder, so she's using the One Asian platform. She's having a fundraiser, a trivia night, and she's invited the whole community to come out and support her. So that's the kind of thing that we like to foster in our community. And why I'm involved is actually very personal because it's not the kind of work that, that's just you come to work at 9 and then you leave at 5. It requires the totality of your time and energy. And the reason I do it is because I personally I experienced so much struggle growing up in Asian culture in Asia, and then growing up as an immigrant of Asian heritage in Canada. And some of the most challenging moments of my life were around, difficulty really balancing the two worlds, like the Asian culture and the Canadian culture. And that led to a lot of tension and conflict within myself and with my parents as well. And as someone who's done a lot of personal growth, I hadn't really been able to find tools or programs that actually address my experience as an Asian woman. So, when One Asian curriculum came along and I was able to take it and experience a transformation for myself, I knew that I was not alone in my experience and that I want, each woman of Asian heritage to experience the freedom and the power that it actually, we want to unleash that in the women,
Yeah.
and if this even resonates for you, I'm not sure what heritage you are, but I know that in East Asian, Southeast Asian culture, there is a legacy of women I'm talking about cultural legacy of women feeling somehow like subordinate or inferior, and
Yeah.
that's something that I carry in myself as well. However, the beauty in that is that we have this inner strength and character that I'm not sure, the women in general are aware of, and that's what we look to bring out, and that the kind of self-awareness and changing the way women look at themselves, and then in turn, changing the way they make decisions in their lives. That to me is like totally priceless, and because I've gone through the transformation myself and I've changed my life, I want that for, every woman
Yeah.
who's ever remotely had the same experience as me.
What is your, number one piece of guidance that helped you a lot in your immigrant experience or in your life in general?
Um, One piece of advice,
Yeah.
I'd say be true to yourself and believe in yourself. And I know it sounds really simple and almost obvious.
Right.
Uh, in my experience, that's been the most challenging thing. Now, I was fortunate to have a mentor in high school who introduced me to this idea because, you know, I mean, without going into, a 2 hour, sharing of
Many hours of sharing. Yeah.
things, yeah, like in a nutshell, growing up in the kind of culture that I grew up in now, keeping in mind maybe not everyone grows up this way, but in general, I felt that I didn't have a lot of confidence growing up because, uh, I was the baby in the family and I was a girl, and I didn't have a lot of external validation, um,
Wow.
and and there was this sense of like having to like compete against compete against my peers or my parents, I mean very well meaningly, but they tried to encourage me by comparing me to the other kids and all that, and which did not make me feel good at all.
Oh yeah.
So
Hmm.
so I had all these experiences that were not really nurturing my own self-confidence, and it took me a long time to learn to get to know myself and who I am and make decisions based on what's true for me rather than what I thought my parents wanted or what I thought my parents' friends would want from me or what would look good. And I think in Asian culture, looking good, appearances are very important. But sometimes it can come at the expense of our spirit. And at the end of the day, you've got to live with yourself. Whether you're happy or not, you're the only one who knows.
Yeah.
You may have like a big house, a big car, the perfect career, but if you're dying on the inside, I don't think it's worth it. So
Yeah.
that would be my message to any woman or Asian women in particular is that um, be true to yourself and don't be afraid to really truly be yourself and make decisions based on that place.
Rosalyn, thank you so much. And you also said that there was something, some leverage that women could, Asian women could use. And what is that?
I would say I would encourage actually women to check out our website and our program. I'm going to give you a little nugget, and
I would love that.
that is my nugget is and I know that a lot of Asian women relate to this. So when I was growing up, I was actually trained not to cry. We talk about how we're very strong. We've developed an inner strength. It's because in my experience, I've been trained to really withhold emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that is actually a doorway to, to even more power and strength if women use it well. On the other hand, the dark side is that, while you could be very emotionally restrained and you may not have a whole lot of self-expression, so which can also be limiting. So that's something that women can explore in themselves, in their programs. And, it's a really beautiful process. They can turn something that maybe is negative, or they may not be aware how it limits them, and make it into something very positive and empowering.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Rosalyn, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to have you, and I really hope that the listeners would look into the One Asian program and check it out. And I would leave the links below the interview for that.
Okay. That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I would love to connect with you again, outside of the interview.